My fellow spirits, look at me now, a dog who cannot even cross the river of Styx. Since today is the anniversary of my death, I have a long, sad story to tell that will wrench the heart out of even the strongest man. Before the war, I used to be joyful and I'd always be by the side of my master, Odysseus. I was healthy and happy and I'd run down the fields to go hunting with my master. I loved him more than I loved anyone else, and his parting broke my heart. He left me for 20 years with disgusting men who refused to take care of me, and with age, my dependence on them increased. But I was abandoned to lie in cow dung, waiting for my master to walk back through those gates. Obviously, I am dead now, and I will tell you the story of my life and my afterlife. It is ironic though, because people knew my master to be an expert storyteller. Let me take you back to my very first sighting of Odysseus. You see, he had breeders all over Ithaca, but he had one breeder who specialized in hunting dogs. My mother, a hunting dog, had 2 children, my brother and I, and she always favored him over me. He was broader and stronger, but I was quick and intelligent. Ever since we were babies, my brother constantly tried to display his dominance over me. He would bite my neck and ears, take my food, and would take all the attention from me. He was a shining star and I was an underdog. One time, my brother took me on a walk on the mountain and bit my leg. I could not move and I had to stay there for 4 days until it healed. In all my intelligence, I could not do anything about it because in a world of dogs, strength is the only thing that mattered. He stripped me of my pride, but as I learned soon enough, my wit would finally overcome his brawn. Odysseus came looking for a dog to bring to his palace, and he tested the 2 of us. Seemingly, he valued my wit over my brother's brawn and chose me. I left that day with my head up high, relishing in my first triumph over my brother. I walked into his grand palace with high expectations, and my master lived up to those. Ever since I was born, I had been in a constant struggle to be loved, and it was up to my master to fill that. The first hunting trip I went on was when Odysseus went to visit his grandfather, Autolycus. We traveled up the mountain in Parnassus with his grandfather's dog that led the way with me beside them. They were ferocious, and it reminded me of my brother, but I told myself that I am now Alpha Dog, and the king chose me. On top of that, my master fed me well, and I had bulked up over time. I was set on proving to my master that I was a worthy choice, and I accomplished that goal. Odysseus pushed us onward until we found a massive boar that was hiding behind dense leaves. We were all sweating at this point, and Odysseus wanted to prove his strength, just like me. Odysseus wanted to be the first to strike it, but the boar got to him first and plunged his tusk deeply into my master's knee. I winced as the boar kept on going deeper, but Odysseus managed to whip his arm around and stab the boar's shoulder. The dogs were left to finish the boar off and bring him down to the house. As my master quickly healed his wound with a spell and was rushed back to his grandfather's house to be fully healed. There he was showered with gifts upon our departure. Now that you know about my childhood, I will skip ahead a few years to the start of the war. I can vividly remember the day my master left. He patted me on the head and rubbed my back. I licked his hand, assuming he'd be back in a few days. Sadly, those few days turned out to be 20 years. After I realized he would not be back soon, I decided that I was left the responsibility to guard his kingdom. It took a very short time for me to realize I failed. 123 suitors poured into my master's beloved palace and started to court his loving wife. They marched into the home timidly at first, but as Odysseus' time away increased, so did their courage. They now strutted with confidence as if they owned the place. I was left in the dirt, and I had to scavenge for my food like a dirty vulture. I was usually at the peak of starvation, and the only thing that kept me going was my hope for Odysseus' return. I watched as the life breathed out of me, but I was determined to live on until I could lay my eyes on my master one more time. I could hear Penelope crying in the silence of the night, and I would howl along with her. She was a loyal wife, and I the loyal dog. What I do not understand is why the loyal have to be punished so severely if they are good. For example, my brother, who was haughty, had everything he cared for in his life. It was as if the gods wanted to play a dirty joke on me. Everywhere I looked, I could see my master's face, but it was only an illusion created by the hunger. I lived like this for 20 years upon a mound of dirt, yearning for my master's return and living on hope, until one day, my prayers were somewhat answered. I could hear footsteps, not like that of a lowly suitor, but that of an old, ancient king. Broad, confident, yet anxious footsteps approached the gates. However, I could not see who it was yet, because I could barely move. The footsteps were quickly approaching, and they thundered in my sensitive ears. 1, 2, 1, 2. I had a feeling that this man was special. I mustered all my strength to lift my head. Slowly it began to rise. The first time my body decided to comply with my head. It rose higher until I could not summon any more strength to lift it further. My neck strained from pure effort. As I looked up, I saw a man in rags, hidden behind his facade that fooled stupid men. However, I recognized my master immediately, and he caught my eye. My heart soared, but I could not get up due to my old age. This point should have been the happiest of my life, but it was just the opposite. As I gazed upon my best friend, he looked at me one more time, then slowly turned around. The grief was too much for me, and my whole life seemed a waste. At that moment, I died with my eyes catching the glint of a teardrop streaming down his face, catching the sunlight. I knew something was wrong, but I could not do anything about it because I left the material world with a slight whimper. So, I was put on this earth to be a loyal companion to Odysseus, but was he one to me? Was the sight of my master enough after 20 years of waiting just for him? Did he love me? Maybe. Did he show it? Never. A dog should be a man's best friend, but he hid his face. Is it acceptable now that I know that he did it to protect his identity? I will never know. I am torn between hating him for betraying me and not taking the time to even show a little affection, and loving him for finally coming back to me. Is that teardrop my life's worth? Friendship should be able to be summarized in more than a tear. But I forgive him because he saved me from a life from cowering under a brother. He rescued me, and I died for him. Now, we are even.